I am honored to be with Kathryn Shibelski, second chance hiring advocate. She's the owner of KES HR Consulting in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Welcome.
Thank you, Noah. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this Kathryn, uh, her work fits perfectly into our new season about how to hire and retain employees, um, particularly for machining companies. She uh, has a specialty in second chance hiring, and so first, why don't you explain second chance hiring and what you do personally for your work?
Sure. So, second chance hiring involves giving people a second chance, right? So, you are sort of making a commitment as an organization to hire people that maybe you wouldn't normally hire, people who have a background or who are freshly out of prison or jail.
So, a second chance hire isn't necessarily somebody who's out of jail.
Correct. Um, so a second chance hire could be somebody who has been out of prison for a long time
Hmm.
or who is still incarcerated and perhaps is involved in a work release program.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And most of the time, are you working with the people that have already been released?
Yes, most of the time you're working with people who have a some sort of criminal background. Could be 20 years ago, could be last year, but those are the vast majority of people that I'm working with. Yep.
All right, very interesting. Okay, now I need the 3-minute life story.
3-minute life story is I am a human resources professional. I've been a human resources professional my entire career, except for a brief stint in there that we won't talk about.
Oh, now
Um,
you totally got my interest. Come on.
So I worked for a temp agency in Monterey, California, for a brief amount of time, 8 months, and I worked for National Geographic School Publishing for a teeny amount of time, doing something completely random.
Those both
So
sound kind of interesting. Monterey, California. I mean,
absolutely, absolutely, yeah, it's a beautiful place. It was really cool to work there, but so the rest of my career has been human resources, and I started working with companies who hire formerly incarcerated people, and was really struck in my role as a human resources professional at the the level of not being prepared for work that a lot of these people are. So if they're being recently released from prison, they're not necessarily up to all of the work rules, if you will, and what all that entails. And so I was seeing a lot of turnover. So people were leaving voluntarily oftentimes because they couldn't handle it being at work, and or they were being fired and disciplined. And so
so
I
you
was struck
were
by
you
that.
were consulting various companies, and then these companies did have some second chance hires, and then you were seeing these issues.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Okay. Um, just before we go any further, what made you want to go into HR?
My dad, as cliche as that may sound, my dad is a human resources professional and has been for many decades. And he got me into it. I was around it as a kid, and what a lot of people don't even know that human resources exists as a profession that somebody would choose to do. But I knew about it throughout my entire childhood and chose it. as a profession because I wanted to make changes within the profession. So I kind of do HR differently, and that's kind of my thing.
How do you do it differently?
I'm a lot more people focused. Um,
I thought
I
that
think
that's the definition of human resources.
that's what it should be. Noah, that's what it should be. But a lot of the times, my fellow HR people are stuck in offices and they don't get out. Either they're not fully supported, so they have to be stuck in offices doing administrative tasks, or they like to be in their offices and don't want to leave them. So early in my career, I started leaving the HR office and actually going out and talking to the people who
Like
work at the
people in the shop, you mean, or people where
going
whatever.
on the shop floor, getting involved in the manufacturing process, standing with them on the line, talking with them. And when I was working in, white collar office settings, going to their cubicles, going to their offices and chatting with them and finding out who they are. So I think building relationships that way is really important, because as you build rapport, people feel more comfortable coming to you
How
when
does
they're
HR differ in a white collar setting versus a blue collar setting?
that's not much. It's really just the work setting. I have to tell you, people are people, no matter
That's what I
where.
figured.
The same sort of issues come up everywhere. People have disagreements everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So people have relationships everywhere. So people are people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into second chance.
Sure.
Um, so, we should talk about, what role you play, etc. But first, um, I just want to know why. What are the main reasons to do this? Now, I mean, I think the obvious reason is that everybody in our industry right now, I mean, it's a great thing. Our industry is super hot. Everybody just can't find enough people. Um, when you need people, you can't find them. When you can't find them, when you don't need them, there's a million of them. That's just the way the world is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there are a lot of people that um, don't have jobs, that are formerly incarcerated. So that's one thing. Um, but but still, I mean, it just, to me, at the first thought would be quality over quantity. Like, is this the right direction you want to go? So give me some data or observations you've made.
So some of my observations are that formerly incarcerated employees are some of the most loyal people that you could ever hire, because their gratitude for that opportunity far surpasses any challenge that may come up while they are employed, because they really either need to stick with the job because of their parole or probation, or they need it because this is the only way that they're supporting themselves. They're glued to the job in a different sort of way than you would get from somebody who doesn't maybe have a criminal background and can go to the next employer down the street who isn't focused on that area. So you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get loyalty, through the roof loyalty, actually.
And
And there are
that's what you'd say the majority of people.
absolutely, absolutely,
Okay.
from my observations. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Grateful for the job. Um, so some of the more practical aspects, there are some pretty nice tax breaks that you can get as an organization who hires formerly incarcerated people. Those are the through the work opportunity tax credit, WOTC. So, you know, your finance professionals or HR professionals can look that up and hook you up with what you need to do in order to get that tax break. And then certain federal prisoners are eligible for a federal bond. There's a federal bonding program for certain people. So they're qualified for that. So there's sort of this added layer of safety there that you as a business could have if you chose to go in that direction. You
Okay.
know, can I just also say that
Anything.
you are doing a wonderful thing for your community by hiring formerly incarcerated people, because you are breaking the cycle of getting back into jail by offering well and good paying jobs.
Mhm.
And that means something, I think, from a society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a very um, purposeful, altruistic thing.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I was looking at some statistics you sent me,
Yeah.
um, you know, and I saw they see in the armed forces 33% more people enlisted are in the army are likely to reach the rank of sergeant. Um, do you know any of the science behind that, or is it just kind of what you've been saying? It's just they're grateful to be where they're at.
I have to tell you, like, gratitude is so underrated. So, you know, and I've been a human resources professional through many different aspects of our economy, right? So where we cannot find people, to where we have an influx of people, to where, you know, we're swinging back this way, where we are racking our brains to try any creative thing to get people in the door and plugged in at your organization, right? um, Having that mindset of, I need a job, I need this job on a different level, I cannot go in to just any place. If you are labeling yourself as an organization as felon friendly or second chance hiring friendly, you're going to get a whole stream of people in your door who do not have the ability to get in anywhere else.
Yeah,
And so you are setting yourself apart as an employer into this whole other realm of sort of these elite organizations who have decided to set aside, um, uh, you know, their prejudices
sure.
about this group of people. So you're getting these people in who gratitude is the underlying factor, and it really makes a big difference.
Yeah, of course. So uh, let's go over a few. Well, first, one other question is: do most of the companies that hire second chance workers, do they hire just a few, or are some just like, you know, half the workforce is?
It depends on the organization. And so one of the things that I consult people on is how to sort of create those boundaries for your own organization and ask those questions. So for an organization who is wanting to sort of dip their toe into this topic and figure out if it's right for them or not, um, some of the questions you should be asking yourself is, how comfortable do I feel with this? How comfortable does our workforce feel with this entire sort of concept? Is it going to be well received? And how do I go about, you know, making it well received if it's not going to be well received? And then questions about backgrounds themselves. So what type of background am I willing to hire? And addressing any legal questions as well. So there may be certain types of industries that legally cannot hire a certain type of background. So you just want to be um, cognizant of those things maybe before you jump in. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and so some of the challenges are, people just don't have normal life skills, right? I mean,
Yes. So, but here's all the other thing that I found is that this is just speaking from personal experience, they have a different set of life skills. So it's
right.
not normal necessarily, but there's some MacGyver type stuff that you can find with these folks, especially the folks who maybe were incarcerated for, I don't know, like greater than 2 or 3 years, having to utilize the things that you have available, the small amount of items that you have available to
It's
you in your
interesting
cell.
training. Yeah.
It is. So, and I've heard stories of, okay, how do you create weights in order to weight lift while you're in your cell? And it's this, you've got trash bags, you've got water, and so you're fashioning these dumbbells that are just with the items that you have. Think about.
Oh, okay. Wait. You cut out for a second.
Sure.
Um, so you were on the dumbbells, and then you
Yes.
cut out.
So sorry about that. Yeah. So there's innovation there that you wouldn't necessarily consider with these folks. So they don't have maybe the normal life skills, but they've got this innovative set of other skills that
Very
you can
interesting.
use. Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And what what crimes? I mean, my assumption is it's sort of across the board. The various crimes people have committed. Um, what are some of the ones you've dealt with, and what are some of the ones, if you are a prospective employer and looking into this, who maybe should, maybe this doesn't sound good, but who should one stay away from versus go for, or is that not even a choice? You don't really get to.
Let me answer the first part of your question. I've worked with people all sorts of backgrounds, from murder to sex crimes to petty drug offenses to white collar financial crimes,
Mm,
the gambit. So I've worked with all sorts of people. As far as what you should steer clear of, that's it's an individual employer choice. Um, so if you are gung ho on this entire concept of second chance hiring, I would make a case that you shouldn't necessarily discriminate, if you will, against any type of background or length of background or type of background
yeah.
if you're all for it. However, you may be more comfortable working with people who haven't been incarcerated for a very, very long time. If you're just sort of dipping your toe in, because there's something that happens, there's this institutionalization that occurs within the brain of people who have been incarcerated for long periods of time,
What's long?
meaning decades.
Decades.
Yeah, a decade, more than a decade. Um, so, the longer that you are in this it's a very controlled environment, as you can imagine. Um, there are, there's certain levels of PTSD that can occur, and that sort of thing, that maybe you want to be aware of as an employer before you're hiring formerly incarcerated people. But again, I would encourage you,
Yeah.
if you're all for it and going with a second chance hiring policy, to open the doors to all sorts of people.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'd be afraid of certain people. I'd be afraid of somebody that had a lot of substance abuse history, like that's just not a good recipe. Personally, if I was, I mean, I'm all for people having second chances, etc. But um I don't know. I find it very interesting to hear that how many people succeed afterward, and it's very easy to just assume uh something. um
Yes, it is easy to assume something. And when you start to get to know these folks too, and get to know the stories of how they even got there in the first place, um, they touch you. It's touching.
yeah,
It sort of widens your eyes to bigger topics as far as what our criminal justice system is doing, and bigger topics. But
well, okay, so my impression is that some of this is a criticism of, I'm not saying you are personally criticizing our prison system. um some people would, uh but in a way it seems like it's showing that maybe there is something that comes out of the prison system or the legal system, because if people weren't put in prison, then they wouldn't feel this urgency to get this job, a legitimate job. um you have any thoughts about that?
that's it's a much it is a deep and complex issue, Noah.
Yeah, sure.
um, there are many reasons why people do what they do, especially if we're looking at something like petty drug crimes, and our history in the United States of sort of sweeping people up in these petty drug offenses,
Yeah.
and with marijuana specifically, which of course is becoming legal in many parts of our country. Um, so it's so difficult to really pinpoint anything specific. I mean, it's a complex issue.
Yeah, sure.
I have lots of thoughts on it and why people get to where they get, but
Exactly. No, it's totally complicated. Why don't you discuss a little bit some of the programs they have in prison, as far as there is some training people provide, correct?
yes. So it depends on your area of the country. There are certain prison systems in our country, including here in Michigan, that are seeking to train uh, their inmates so that they have skilled trades for that they are prepared for their release. So machining is one of those trades that certain prisoners are being trained in certain states here
Hmm.
in the United States, which is great.
That is great. That is great.
Yep.
um okay, so back to the challenges. you know it seems like one of the biggest things you have to do is get people on board in the company. It can't just be a top down thing. um and that is partly where you come in, to
Yes.
advise, to
Yes. So yeah. So I come in a variety of areas, but yes, your number one step is you have to get buy-in. So you're getting buy-in from your leadership team, and you're getting buy-in from your employees to a certain extent.
is it
Um,
harder to get a buy-in from? I'm thinking the employees, the coworkers.
it really depends. So it depends on who's got prejudices against these folks. So you may have people who have had very personal experiences,
Yeah.
crime of varying kinds, who don't want anything to do with people who have been locked up. Um, they're they're sort of our modern day pariahs. They're lepers in our communities, where people don't even want to touch them or be near them for fear of, I don't know what, being
Well,
associated.
imagine if somebody in your family was sexually assaulted, and then you have, you know, or
Absolutely.
imagine somebody was killed in a drug deal.
Yep.
Imagine somebody, I mean, these are um huge obstacles. There must be a big payoff if you're going to be dealing with these things.
And
Um,
I have to tell you, on the flip side of that, because there are some areas of my personal life that are touched by the things that you just said. Um, but on the flip side, how many of us have family members who have been in our
hmm,
criminal justice system? How many of our family members have been locked up for things that we understand perhaps, or we look at as they've served their time and now they need a job, and now they need to do something with their lives. And so I kind of look at it from the flip side too, is
that's true.
are you going to employ your brother who's been, for example, who's been locked up and needs a job now? Yeah, sure, he's your brother, you've got a company.
Maybe.
But right. Right. But
So
you hear what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So say one of our listeners wants to do this.
Yeah.
They would call somebody like you, or call you, and then how, what do you do? What's your magic that you perform?
Well,
Besides educating people.
sure. Education is a huge piece of it. Kind of letting them know what it is that they're getting themselves into before they fully pull the trigger. Um, and for those who already know that they're ready to do this, I provide a couple of different resources to make sure that their workplace is up and running and ready to go for this type of employee, so that you're reducing your turnover and you're increasing your engagement of these folks. Um, so making sure that your onboarding process is touching on all of the points that you need to, in order to get these, in my experience, to get these folks fully onboarded and successful at your company, and that sort of thing. Addressing prejudices in your leadership team.
Okay, so
Um,
what do you tell somebody, what, say there's a great candidate, and you know 8 or 9 out of 10 are on board, but one is not, and one is a very important person on the team. So what do you do?
Depends on the company. I mean, so
Okay, so small to
how
medium sized company, somebody in the shop. How would you mediate this?
hit them with logic, hit them with the why do you want, why does the company want to be even moving in this direction in the first place?
Hmm.
What are the just like what we've been talking about here today, what are the positives of doing something like this? And then making sure that the other person is heard, because perhaps they've had a traumatic experience in their life that they you know don't want to talk about, or don't want to get involved with any of these folks. They say they think it's too much of a risk. Then we do a risk assessment. We talk about what are the risks, and that leads us
Mm,
to where your boundaries are as a company. We are hiring nonviolent offenders. We are going to, exclusively, we're gonna, so you're setting up those boundaries where everybody can sort of be comfortable with this stage of hiring.
interesting. Uh, do you have any s- general advice um, for business owners right now in the manufacturing fields, in the trading, in the trades, who are looking for people to hire, whether it be somebody in your specialty uh, um, or anything. What advice do you have for people?
Good luck. I know it's hard out there right now. I feel you. I hear you. Um, you know, start getting creative with
Well,
where you're.
this is the kind of thing. This is being creative.
This is absolutely one of those creative outlets that works for a lot of people. Some people it might not work for, but it will work for some. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Um, just a couple more questions. To you, what does the word happiness mean?
Oh gosh, happiness is a feeling for me. I feel it. I feel it in my body. If you hear the word, I feel it sort of swell up in me.
I can tell. Just
Yeah, it's like sunshine in my belly. Yep, just swells right up.
interesting. Um, what is what's one thing you learned in the last week about anything?
Oh gosh, I'm not really in
Or
whole
yesterday?
heck of a lot of learning mode right now. I'm kind of in doing mode with my new baby at home. Um, what did I learn? I've learned that the housing market here in Grand Rapids, Michigan is absolutely insane. And
Wow.
we are looking to sell a house and the economy is just absolutely crazy. So getting involved in that aspect right now too. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and any that's a great one. Is there anything else that you feel is important to say to the people of the world?
I'm passionate about this subject, the subject of second chance hiring. And so I really appreciate you giving me a platform to talk about one of my passions. Um, I think that I would just ask a question to your listeners. Are you going to be the first employer who gives somebody a second chance? Because that's the hard part. It's easy once they've already got other things on their resume that other people have already done that hard part of giving them the first chance, the first of their second chances. Um, but are you going to be the first one? You
Fantastic.
should be. It's good.
Um, and if people want to find out more about you, is there a website they can go to, or
Yeah,
LinkedIn, or?
I have a website. It's pretty rudimentary at this point, and so I would love to lead people to my LinkedIn profile. It's Kathryn Shibelski. It's my name. I'm sure you can link it somewhere, um, and that's the best way to find out more about me and get in touch with me.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Kathryn. This was so interesting, and I hope helpful for somebody out there.
I hope
Um,
so too.